Welcome to The Explainer. If you're someone who absolutely loves to untangle the fascinating threads of history, geography, and language, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're zooming in on one of the most culturally rich and historically layered regions on Earth, the Indian subcontinent. Now, you might be wondering, how does a single landmass acquire so many wildly diverse names over the millennia? Names like India, Bharat, Hindustan, and maybe even a few you've literally never heard before. Well, the origins of these names form an incredible mystery, one that spans ancient texts, massive empires, and foreign travelers. So let's just dive right in and solve this puzzle together.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, India, that is, Bharat. Second, the roots of Bharat. Third, the island of Jamun trees. Fourth, foreign travelers and Sindhu. And finally, number 5, the making of Hindustan.
Okay, Section 1, India, that is Bharat.
Right out of the gate, we're looking at the very first page of the original 1950 Constitution. If you read closely, Article 1 famously begins with the phrase, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. It's incredible, really. The foundational legal document of this modern nation embraces a dual identity right from the jump. It officially recognizes both a name derived from foreign linguistic influences, India, and this deeply indigenous, ancient name, Bharat. It's a remarkably powerful legal acknowledgement of a multi-layered history. But how exactly did these two completely different names and several others come to define the exact same physical space?
To answer that, we really have to look at the land itself. Just notice the sheer contrast, but also the deep connection between the physical geography and the ancient political boundaries. You've got this physical expanse defined by massive natural barriers, the imposing Himalayas to the north, the Hindu Kush, and those vast oceans to the south. And within all of that, a rich, sprawling network of rivers. But even back in the ancient epic of the Mahabharata, the land was divided into many different political regions. What you really need to take away from this is that long before modern cartography was even a thing, the ancient people inhabiting this land were already geographically defining their world. They used these huge natural boundaries to conceptualize a unified, distinct subcontinent, even when it was actually composed of dozens of different kingdoms.
Moving on to Section 2, the roots of Bharat.
We actually find our very first major clue in the oldest known text of the region, the Rig Veda, which dates back thousands of years. It specifically mentions the northwestern part of the subcontinent, a region it calls Sapta Sindhu, the land of the 7 rivers. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that word Sindhu. In ancient Sanskrit, Sindhu didn't have any complex meaning. It literally just meant a river. More specifically, the massive Indus River flowing through that northwest region. This exact geographic anchor point is where the earliest identities began to form, way before the concept of a modern nation-state ever even crossed anyone's mind.
Okay, so what about Bharat? Well, the Rig Veda also talks about a major, very prominent Vedic group of people known as the Bharat. And here is where a pretty fascinating morphological shift happens. Over centuries, the name evolved. It went from describing a specific group of people up in the northwest to describing the entire geographical expanse that they and their culture influenced. By the time later epics like the Mahabharata were being written down, the term had expanded into Bharatvarsh, which encompassed the whole subcontinent. Basically, it completely shifted from a who to a where.
This brings us to a truly stunning piece of ancient geography. I want to read you this powerful quote from the Vishnu Purana, a text written many centuries ago. The country that lies north of the ocean and south of the snowy mountains is called Bharat. I mean, just pause and think about that for a second. We're talking about an era with absolutely no satellites or modern mapping, yet the inhabitants of this incredibly diverse land shared a unified, overarching geographical definition. They entirely understood the physical scale of their world, bound by the Himalayas and the Indian Ocean, and they gave that entire massive expanse a single name, Bharat.
And this definitely wasn't just some northern concept either. Ancient Indians up and down the entire subcontinent knew their geography remarkably well. In 2,000-year-old Tamil literature down in the Deep South, you'll find poems praising kings whose fame stretches from Cape Kamari, the southernmost tip, literally all the way up to the Great Northern Mountains, and from the Eastern Ocean to the Western Ocean. In these southern texts, this vast unified land was often respectfully referred to as Bharatam. So this geographical consciousness of a singular massive subcontinent, it was a widely shared ancient reality for sure.
Let's jump into Section 3, the island of Jamun trees.
Long before India even existed as a concept,
Ancient texts affectionately refer to this landmass as Jambudvipa. Now, Jambudvipa literally translates to the island of the jamun tree, which you might know as the Malabar plum. The jamun tree is a super common native plant found pretty much all over the subcontinent. It's just endlessly fascinating to see how ancient people didn't just root their geographical identity in cold, hard mountains and rivers, but actually in the very trees that shaded their land and gave them food.
You might be wondering, was this just some obscure, poetic term? Not at all. It was used massively. Emperor Ashoka, who was literally one of the most powerful rulers in ancient history, used the term Jambudvipa in his famous rock and pillar inscriptions right around 250 BCE. And Ashoka's empire was certainly no small territory. When he used Jambudvipa to describe his realm, he meant a staggering geographical area. We're talking modern-day India, modern-day Bangladesh, Pakistan, and even parts of Afghanistan. Jambudvipa was a term of grand imperial scale, but firmly rooted in local nature.
All right, Section 4, Foreign Travelers and Sindhu.
Let's circle back to that fundamental root word we discussed earlier, Sindhu. When foreign invaders, traders, and travelers started arriving from the west, they naturally encountered this massive river. But there was a catch. Their languages simply didn't have the exact phonetic sounds to properly pronounce the Sanskrit word Sindhu. And what happens next is honestly one of the greatest games of linguistic telephone in human history. Let's just walk through this brilliant etymological chain step by step. Step 1. It all starts with the Sanskrit Sindhu. Step 2. Around the 6th century BCE, ancient Persians under their great emperors expanded eastward to the river. Now in ancient Persian, the S sound naturally shifted to an H sound, so Sindhu became Hindu or Hind. Step 3. Later on, the ancient Greeks came into contact with those Persian records, and eventually the land itself. But the Greek language doesn't naturally accommodate that hard H sound at the beginning of words, so they just dropped it entirely. Hindu became Indoi or Indique, referring to the people and the land of the Indus. And it's from Indique that the Latin word India was eventually born.
Now, I really need to clarify an absolutely crucial historical distinction here. When the ancient Persians created the word Hindu to describe the lands they encountered, it was purely 100% a geographical term. It simply meant the land around and beyond the Sindhu River. At that specific time in ancient history, the Persian word Hindi carried absolutely zero religious context. The shift of that word to describe a specific set of religious traditions is a much, much later historical development. Originally, it was all about the geography of the river.
And you know, this linguistic journey didn't just happen over in the West. Ancient Chinese travelers and scholars were adapting the name too. Through trade, interactions, and translating texts over the centuries, the root Sindhu or Hindu was phoneticized into Indu. The Chinese then recorded this in their scripts as Yintu or Yindu. So whether we're talking about Greeks in the West or Chinese scholars in the East, that mighty Sindhu River was the undeniable anchor point for naming the entire subcontinent.
Which brings us to Section 5, the making of Hindustan.
Take the famous 7th century Chinese traveler and Buddhist scholar Xuanzang. He spent 17 whole years traveling the Indian subcontinent, gathering Buddhist texts and engaging with local scholars. When he went back, he documented his vast travels. And alongside Indu, another Chinese term used historically was Tianzhu. Derived phonetically from Sindhu, Tianzhu translates roughly to heavenly lord or heavenly master. It really reflects the deep, deep reverence ancient Chinese scholars held for the subcontinent, viewing it as this highly sacred birthplace of Buddhism. Just look at how different global cultures adapted a single river's geographic identity into their own languages over the centuries. Persian and Arabic gave us Hind and Hindustan. Greek gave us Indoi. Latin gave us India, which of course passed directly into English. Chinese gave us Yindu. French gave us Ind. Every single one of these wildly diverse names, which are spoken all across the globe today, is quite literally just a linguistic echo of ancient foreigners trying their best to pronounce the Sanskrit word Sindhu.
And specifically regarding the term Hindustan, which is obviously so widely known today, it is essentially an ancient Persian formulation. You see, the suffix stan just means land of in Persian. So Hindustan literally translates to the land of the Hindus. And again, originally that just meant the people of the Sindhu River. The very earliest known use of this exact term actually popped up roughly 1800 years ago in an ancient Persian inscription. As subsequent empires and invaders entered the subcontinent from the northwest over the following centuries, they adopted this Persian term, and it eventually just became the standardized way to describe the whole region.
So what does this all mean for us today? The modern constitution's elegant phrase, India, that is Bharat, isn't just some dry legal compromise. It is a stunning time capsule.
It perfectly captures the indigenous Veda groups of the ancient Northwest, the vast floral empires of Jambudvipa, the geographic reverence of Chinese monks, and the phonetic struggles of Persian and Greek explorers. So I'm going to leave you with this question to ponder. How many places on Earth carry the unbroken legacy of nearly 5,000 years of human geography, local flora, and global linguistics, all captured perfectly within the very first sentence of its highest law? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating historical puzzle with me today. Keep digging into the history around you, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.